Hello everyone, welcome back to the second episode of our new series called A Levels to S Tier. Today we have an amazing caster, Fraser. Hello, welcome very much. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, no worries. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. I think what you're doing is very important. So let's kind of get cracking with this, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been doing, you're mainly a caster, aren't you? That's how you would
Yes.
describe yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of who you are, where you came from, and a little bit more about your casting career?
Yeah, more than happy to. My name's Fraser. I'm a 22-year-old analyst and caster working within Siege. I primarily go with casting nowadays due to the availability of jobs, to be blunt. It's one of those where within esports, it's constantly changing, so you kind of have to change up alongside, and you really have to kind of develop and evolve alongside the market that you want to get into. So I actually started out casting. It was actually just over a year ago now, 380 3 days, I believe, November 30th, 2019.
Nice, that's impressive that you know exact day. It's like a birthday, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. How was the first cast? Do you remember it vividly?
Yes. It was for CCSW. It's the women's league for CCS, like a community level event. It was absolutely terrifying for me. I was initially working as an analyst for some of the teams. I got brought on as kind of a bit of a, oh, hey, you know what you're talking about. Hey, do you want to come on and give it a go? And I'm like absolutely terrified. Now this is like last year. I'm struggling with social anxiety. I have Asperger's syndrome, social communication, not my thing whatsoever. I was terrified, and I'll be blunt, it was horrendous, but I got through it, and it got me to where I am right now. So I'm very, it's one of those where you remember your first. Like, you're never expecting it to be good. You're just wanting it to be something that you can look back on and, in the future and go, hey, if I didn't do this, then all of these different things wouldn't have happened in my life. I wouldn't have had the experiences, the life experiences, which I think is very important.
Yeah. How was the change? Because you mentioned you worked as an analyst before, so you knew the game in and out, and then you had to do shoutcasting. And I can imagine doing the analyst stuff. Like it's a lot of preparation, looking at VODs and things like that. But the shoutcasting is live. How stressful and or exciting is the switch between doing sort of VODs and then going into live? Because for me personally, like I love doing these kind of videos. But if I had to do these live, it's a completely different thing. Like, for all of a sudden, it just feels like there's a lot more pressure.
I mean, this is the thing. When you're working as a pure analyst, for, behind the scenes, so to speak, you're writing down your notes on, on Google, like Google Drive, right? You're able to just write it down. Whereas when you're casting, you're actually having to use your voice, which sounds so absolutely dumb. But it's such a completely change of pace, like the way that you transfer the information, the way that you explain things and break things down. To be blunt, you have to be eloquent about it. It's not something I'm particularly good at, but you have to try. On the other hand, when you're doing your notes and you're writing things down, it's a lot more black and white, right? You can skip a lot of the kind of the entertainment value of it, because the teams only care about, are you right, are you wrong, what are you predicting, what are these teams going to be doing, what can you expect? Right, and that's very literal, right? It's a very much a do this, do this, do this, do this, right? And then when you're casting, on the other hand, you're not really doing that. When you're trying to break down what the teams are doing, you're not necessarily doing it for an educational point of view. You're doing it more for an informational side, So you're trying to add a little bit of information in there, but you also want it to be entertaining to people who, to be blunt, might not care. People that may not have as much experience in the game as you. You have to look at the audience, and especially in my scene, if there's, say, 100 people watching, of those 100 people, how many of them have competitive experience? Let's say 20. That leaves 80 people who've only ever watched before. And how many of them might be new viewers? Maybe they don't have as much knowledge about the game. So really kind of knowing your audience is crucial for something like that, and being able to work towards that and looking at, okay, this is what people are interested in. My job is to engage with these people, so I'm going to go for that, right?
Yeah, one thing I definitely noticed when watching the streams you cast for Rainbow Six was how good you are at explaining things for everyone who's watching. So sort of from people who are very good at the game and like know ins and outs, and people who are brand new. Because like when I started watching Rainbow Six, I had no idea how the game works. Like, I didn't even know that, you know, I had no idea of the maps. I had no idea of the economy, if there is an economy, like how the picks and bans work. And like the explanations you've done are amazing. And I guess that's usually, sort of when casting, there's 2 or maybe sometimes 3 casters for bigger tournaments, isn't it? And do you usually have sort of a color caster and a play-by-play caster? Like, what's the difference between those casters for anyone who doesn't know?
Okay, so within Siege and within a lot of FPS games, you generally have different roles for the casters depending on what they specialize in, what their niche is, what they're well known for. So as an example, you'll have in Siege, you can have like analysts and colors, play-by-play casters, and something that is more recently come in, especially within EUL, hybrid casters, who are essentially kind of an amalgamation of both. So for myself, I prefer to think of myself as being an analyst and a color caster. That basically means my job is to look at what's going down on the screen, break it down in a way that people can understand, and that isn't boring to listen to. That can be quite difficult at times, considering how massive Siege is, the amount of variables, dynamics involved. But that's also the challenge of it, and that's what makes it so entertaining, is being able to sit there and go, you know what, this is what they're doing right now, and I'm going to give you a bit of a deep dive into this to basically explain what is going on. And you're looking over at the different things that are going on in game. So, you know, like the gadgets, the utility that the players might have, which operators are playing, what map they're playing, whereabouts they are on the map, what they could do with all of these different things. And you're really kind of taking this puzzle, and you're not necessarily putting it together, but you're giving the pieces to the viewer to then put together themselves. Because I know from my own experience, if I'm watching, if I'm watching a game for the first time, there's that satisfaction of figuring out, oh, so this is why this player is using a flashbang in this area. Okay, so he's doing that to make sure that if he pushes, it's clear. Or, so I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to keep that in my mind for the next time I watch, because there's nothing better than feeling, hey, I know that. I understand that. That's great. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when watching the casts, a lot of the times, especially when I'm brand new at Rainbow, is the casters mention something like, oh, so they picked, this and this operator, and they're setting up this way, and that is specifically done because X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And then exactly that happens. And you go like, oh my God, it's so obvious. Like obvious we're going to do that, but like without the casters explaining it, it's obviously impossible to know for especially the new viewers. So when it comes to game preparation, how much preparation do you do before the games? Not looking into years of experience before, like a day. Let's put it that way. What does a day of caster look like?
Okay, so I mean, for myself, you're going to need a lot of whiskey. Secondly to that, no, being entirely serious, I think it varies for casters. Some people like to go into it and they just kind of go with the flow, so to speak. Again, my experience is as an analyst, I like knowing what people are going to do. I'll be blunt, that is nice. It's being able to go out there and say, okay, so, they, historically speaking, this team has been strong on this map. You've seen them play, say, for example, X team have played Consulate 3 times in a row here. So I'm really hoping to see the other team ban that out. And being able to break down facts, okay, this team has done this, and then you add a little bit more of a potential, right, to kind of make it exciting, make it engaging, make it something where it's a talking point, not only for the chat, but also for the co-casters that you're playing with or you're casting with. So for myself, I take a lot of notes both during the game, but also beforehand. So I look at any previous matches, any previous history, any previous tournaments that they played in. If you look at what a team has done in the past, it can give you an indication for what they're going to do in the future. And that's one of the core things. Being an analyst isn't about being 100% right, because you're never going to achieve that. Like, if you look at any kind of data analysis, you know that at the end of the day, all you're doing is predictions. You're predicting what is going to happen. You will never really have an absolute certainty with an esports, but you can sure as hell try your best to try and minimize that kind of obscurity there. I mean, also in addition to that, I mentioned I take a lot of notes during the cast. So when I'm watching through, I'm seeing, okay, what bomb site did they go to? Who got the entry kill? Who got the entry death? Like, how did the plant, how did the game go down? Did they get a plant down? How did the round end? Was it a plant? Was it down to time? Was it down to a kill? And then I put down any additional comments. So, like, any unique things that might have happened in that round. Say, for example, a 4K going down, a 4-kill, round for one player. Maybe they brought a unique operator or an interesting niche and you're really looking for that to maybe later on into the game you can kind of what's the word called? Is it lampshade? Like lamppost? I
So.
don't know. Side, you kind of like that where you're bringing back, towards what something that might have happened earlier in the round. That might go, hey, you know what? Actually, it's really interesting. We're seeing this operator being brought out. Actually, about 10 minutes ago, we saw this exact same operator being brought out on a different lineup. I wonder how this is going to play out. And you're really kind of making sure that people remember, hey, this is this is a storyline going on. This is a timeline. It's not just, X happened at a certain time. It's X happened 10 minutes ago, right? And it's like remembering that everything that happens in this cast, in this broadcast, in this game matters,
Yeah, I feel like it's being a caster is a lot more work than it looks, because a lot of people just think like, oh, it's just, you talk about what you see on the screen and that's it. But like the preparation and just the multitasking you have to do during the casting. It's like, as you mentioned, I can barely, if I tried my hand at casting, not online or anything like that, just for like, I'm just going to cast my game just to see how I would do. And it's like, first 8 seconds are fine, and then you get lost, and then like, okay, you do like a 10-minute casting stint, and then you start trying to think, what happened just now, and do I have any notes? Just like, I have no idea. I just blanked out, absolutely gone. Like it disappears. Yes, doing everything at the same time is ridiculous.
I'd actually be really interested in getting like a short clip. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do it right now, but I would be really interested in getting like a random clip from a cast and actually being able to break that down with you. Yeah. So I'd see what your thoughts are, how you would cast it, and then I could maybe give you my opinion on it. Saying, okay, so this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at all the different things that are going on in the screen, and I'm trying to figure out which point do I want to talk about, which bit do I want to spend 15 seconds explaining, because there's so many different ways to cast, and there's always going to be so many different things that you could talk about. It's about finding what is important for you and what kind of gets your message across in the time that you have available.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely arrange that. Sounds really, really interesting. When it comes to sort of preparations, how tricky is it to keep up with sort of broader industry news and sort of game patch updates, meta changes, and things like that?
I mean, put it this way: I go onto social media in the morning. I wake up in the morning. I go look at Twitter, Reddit, and the first thing I see is literally everything about Siege. It's easier for me to keep up to date more about Siege than it is about the weather forecast right now. I've got a window right there. So it's like when I'm looking at this, I'm constantly being surrounded by this. And obviously being a streamer on top of that, I'm constantly playing the game. To find out any patch notes, I literally, within 10 minutes of it being posted, someone's going to be messaging it to me, or I'm going to see it somewhere. And again, that's also because I'm so kind of invested within the community and invested within Siege. It's such a large part of my life. Not only is it my professional career, but it's also my hobby, my passion. Yeah. For a lot of other people, I do have a couple of co-casters that I work with. Rick is a good example, someone that I worked on UCAN 2 with. He casts a multitude of games, from Counter-Strike, Hearthstone, League of Legends, and Siege. So for him to try and keep up with all of these patch notes, I have no idea how he manages that. I'm struggling with Siege alone. But I think it's one of them. It does get easier over time. And I think the more invested you are into the game, by playing it a fair amount, you gain a lot of experience just by that alone. I mean, I know you're correct me if I'm wrong, you watch a fair bit of League as well, don't you? Because you do a lot of the social media online for some other people. So looking at that, I'm sure you would have a much greater understanding of things that are going on in League than I could ever hope to understand as a pure viewer, because you've got that kind of in-depth kind of, I'm surrounded by this, therefore I kind of have to know what's going on, even if you don't necessarily go out of your way to look at it. Simply by association, you gain that experience and that knowledge. You kind of pick it up as you go along.
Yeah. You briefly mentioned that you do streaming as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
How do you think that helps you with your shoutcasting, or at least did it help you in the beginning?
Yes. So I actually want to go back to something I mentioned that I have Spodger syndrome. Unfortunately, it's something that I have struggled with, my entire life, and I will continue to do so. My social communication when I was younger was terrible. I started streaming, not casting. I started streaming November 3rd, 2016. Back then, I still have clips for that. I struggled a lot with verbal communication. I was stuttering, muttering, and everything along that. Streaming was a way for me to escape from a lot of the struggles that I had, with regards to like social anxiety, and being able to kind of sit down and talk to ultimately, myself in a way. It helped a lot more. It kind of got me back into a more understandable rhythm, and my cadence kind of improved a lot more. And it's one of those where I wouldn't be the same person that I am right now if it wasn't for streaming. Obviously, nowadays, as you can tell, I'm much more confident, a lot more capable in communication, to the degree that my entire profession and my entire career revolves around it. I do love streaming a lot because it's one of those where I've got an entire community built up around, playing the games that we love, and being able to sit down with people that I know and I care about a lot. It helps a lot, especially within the current climate of COVID, lockdown, wear a mask.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense that streaming has kind of become a second home for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe a lot of people are sort of very worried about doing, their first streams, their first shoutcasts and things like that. Like, it's just a hurdle you have to go through. And I guess the first few casts or first few streams are gonna be tricky. You're gonna stress. It's gonna be very worrying. But after that, it just gets better and better and easier. I'm sure it doesn't get very easy. I'm sure still you get nervous before going casting, but I'm sure it's not as bad as the first time.
I think it's the same as anything in life. Nothing worth doing is ever easy.
Yeah.
It's that concept of, if it's easy, do you really need to stress about it? No. Because if it's easy, then you already feel confident doing it. That's not to say that confidence is a bad thing, but being aware that it's okay to be scared and it's okay to be worried or nervous about something, because that by itself isn't a bad thing. That's part of being human. It's part of regular emotions, is recognizing, yes, I'm worried about this, but I'm going to do it. Right? It's being able to recognize that you want something, and if you want something, you are going to push for it. You have to, because how else are you going to get anywhere in life without struggling and going through a couple of bad days for ultimately something that is a net gain? I mean, kind of as an example here, coming on to this, I'm still nervous. Like, I can still feel nerves, at the start of this kind of interview here. If you go back, I'm sure you'll probably see me looking a little bit nervous, whereas now I've kind of warmed up to it a little bit more, and that just happens. Why does it happen? Because we're human. We have these emotions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in giving it a go, just do it. Like, think about it logically in your mind. What is holding you back? Is it a fear or a worry of maybe not performing to the same standard as everyone else? That's not fair, because you've just started. You can't compare yourself to other people. Is it a fear of maybe letting other people down? A fear of maybe doing something wrong? We all have that. At the age that we're all at nowadays, I don't think anyone can truly say, I've never made a mistake in my life, because that's simply not true. Just get a bash. Like, you don't know until you've tried it, right?
Yeah, I definitely feel like in this kind of situation, it's better to sort of, regret something you tried and you go like, I tried streaming, I tried shoutcasting, I failed, it was horrible. And knowing that you tried, instead of, 20 years later thinking like, I really wish I actually tried streaming, or I really wish I tried shoutcasting at some point. Absolutely. Right, I want to, for students watching this in schools and colleges, I want them to sort of see your progression of, from very early gaming days to up until now. So maybe some people can connect with that. Not very early days, but let's go back to basics.
Okay.
So like, do you remember what was your first game you ever played? Like, properly played, not meaning like, trying a demo in here and there.
Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Right.
Or the old PlayStation one. I used to play it with my dad a lot. It was so good. I remember that as the Kashyyyk map was my favorite. I loved that game so much. I used to play PS2. I then went over to Xbox. I wasn't really a big FPS player. I'll be honest. I was that kid, right? I was absolutely terrible at FPS games. My friends, they're absolutely incredible, like, phase level. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, this is a really nice death screen. That's great. So I wasn't really up there. And then after a while, I kind of changed over to a lot of strategy games. I like games that challenge me, and games that make me think, and that's entertaining, Like, I don't want an easy game. I want a game that I absolutely suck at. I don't want to get better at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the reason why I absolutely love playing PUBG. Is because I'm
Oh,
generally horrible at it. Like I have, I think around 200 hours in the
yep.
game, and I'm horrible at it. And that's the reason why I still love the game. It's just the fact that knowing that there's an easy opportunity for me to get better, but I still can't get better. Just the constant challenge of it is just so fun.
Actually, it's funny that you kind of mentioned that. I was in the very first closed alpha lobby of PUBG.
Really?
Very first one. Yeah, I started out, I think it was back in 2013 or 2014. I don't remember the exact date. I bought Arma 3, okay, which is a completely different game. It's like a military simulator, a sandbox game, right? Very niche. No one really cares. And since then, I've spent about 4,000 hours in that game. And that was my life for the longest time, kind of going through college and school. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up because at the time I struggled a lot with social communication. I keep talking about it. So for me, video games was an escape for that. It was a way for me to engage with other people on the internet who didn't judge me for struggling with certain things, like even something as simple as eye contact. It's something that casting and streaming actually has helped a lot there. But yeah, so I kind of grew up in that kind of environment of Arma, and that kind of developed into Arma 3 Battle Royale, which was developed by Player Unknown way back when. It was his very first foray into kind of, the Battle Royale genre. It was his first attempt at second attempt, making a video game kind of like that, or making a mod like that at the time. And back then, this was back in like 2016 when I first started streaming, I used to do a couple of like really bad spectate casts, right? Where I was just shoutcasting what the players were doing, what my friends were doing throughout the games. And there was like this really like nifty kind of like spectator cam that you could fly around the map and see what people are doing. It was terrible. It genuinely was. It was pitiful. But I did it because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I didn't think anyone would like it. I don't think anyone did like it. But you know what? I tried it and it was fun. And it kind of got me into that feeling of like, oh, this is kind of fun. Being able to sit down and talk about what people are doing. And I'm smart. I'm a smart boy, all right? I'm a stats boy. I can figure out what these people are going to be doing, and I can figure out where they're going to go on a map. Because you're able to read, and I know you play PUBG here, so you're able to look at the map, and you're able to figure out where these people are going to want to go for the most gear, the most loot, where's going to be the most practical given the variables, at play here. And that kind of also transitioned over to Siege after a while, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine the very first lobby was hella buggy. I mean, it's still,
it crashed. I'm pretty sure it crashed. Like the very first lobby, it literally crashed. I got kicked out. That was hilarious. I remember that as well. They had like apples, right? They're kind of like they had like these boxes of apples that everyone was able to pick up and just throwing them around, waiting for the game to start. It was hilarious. But no, it was great. Yeah.
Very, very fitting for PUBG, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Game definitely not known for its bugs and crashes and everything like that.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned that before going into casting, you did some analytics for a team. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I used to.
How did you get into that?
So back in 2018, I was an ASL admin. I used to, do support tickets, stuff like that. Hey, this is unfair. This guy's cheating. He's using operators I don't have. Well, that's not cheating. Hang on, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So used to deal with a lot of the protests for some of their smaller community cups and stuff like that. And after a while, I ended up leaving. And as I was leaving, I got in touch with a couple of friends, and they're like, "Hey, we want to make a competitive team. We want to give that a go." So they ended up doing that. We failed miserably. I think we got like 7th or 8th place. But it was fun. Like it was basically, I got into it more as we all said that we wanted to join us, make a team. And then it came around to it and we're like, oh, I don't actually know what you can do. Because we had 5 players and we didn't need a 6th.
Yeah.
So I basically became the analyst. They were like, hey, you can be the analyst. No idea what that does. I literally had no idea. I just kind of fumbled my way through it. I was like, yeah, I can analyze the games. No idea what I did. I'll be blunt. I think for the first 2 months I didn't do anything. But It was fun. Like it gave me that experience, and it kind of gave me that lift up into the competitive scene. I met some more people, and as I met more people, I kind of got in touch with other analysts, other coaches, and I learned from them. And it's kind of like a hands-on experience where, for the first couple of months, it was terrible, but I learned through watching what other people did, saw what was important to them, and over time, that kind of gradually became better and better. To the degree now that I am working professionally, and I've I last year and this year I was contracted out with companies such as Red Bull UK and Ubisoft specifically to work as an analyst. I mean, if that's not success, I don't know what is. You know, I think the best way to look at it is take every experience that you can get. Right. The lessons that I learned as an analyst for the teams helped me develop my core skills, my core analytical skills, that I was then able to use in conjunction with, my experience shoutcasting to kind of grow into a small little hobby that grew over time.
Amazing. When looking sort of to the last sort of two questions really, looking at everything you've done with analytics, with casting, do you have a highlight moment so far?
I'm thinking about that. See, this is a problem. I have to be really honest. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I like results. I'll be blunt. A lot of the time when I'm doing casting, it's because I want to have said that I've done it. Right? If I look over the last 383 days of working within Siege, I've done a lot. I've done I think probably 14 to 15 Benelux community events in that time. So that's helping an entirely different community. I've worked at UK Finals, UK and Ireland Nationals Finals, UK and Ireland Second Division. As of right now, I'm not quite sure when this is going to go out, but today and over the past week, I have been casting. I've been doing a community broadcast for the Six Invitational Open Qualifiers, which, for anyone that's not aware, Six Invitational is the biggest event that we have in Siege. It's like the granddaddy of everything. It's like the biggest thing that you can really achieve. So, I mean, yesterday we were going up there. I did zero prep work. I'll be really honest. I did zero prep work. And I was doing two of the biggest teams that I've ever casted before. We hit 1.6k viewers on it. On a qualifier. Now, I'm just looking at that going, this is incredible, but what's next?
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to recognize I'm learning through every single one of these, events, but I think the biggest or like the biggest achievement for me, I have to be honest, would probably be one of my smaller casts, actually. And that was because of the people I was working with. And I'd actually have to go with the Red Bull Sphere Wars. It's just like a small UK community event. And I casted that for 12 hours, I believe. It was 10 to 12 hours alongside Jessica Bolden. She's one of the EWEL and one of the bigger casters here in Siege. She's a really good friend of mine. And that's just really memorable for me because I was working flat out for 10, 11 hours. We were absolutely exhausted by the end of it. Like, I think we had like 5-minute breaks in between every match. Like, it was insane. But it was the experience of sitting down with someone, one of my friends that I care a lot about, being able to have an enjoyable experience representing people that I knew within the community. It only had a couple of hundred viewers, but I think the feeling itself was more satisfying than the numbers. Like, numbers are good, but it's about the life experience that you gain from it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question, any advice to anyone looking to go into casting?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Just fucking do it, mate. Like, seriously, like, at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can gain from listening to other people. Like, I am my own person, just as Jiggy is his own incredible person. You're looking at this and you're wondering, okay, but what can I actually take from this? I don't know. I'm just a guy talking on the internet because this guy asked me to. You know what? Just try it for yourself. If you feel like you might gain some satisfaction or some enjoyment, or maybe some experience out of doing something, what is the harm in trying? I've gotten to the position that I am right now, and I'm in a position where I'm very happy right now. Because I do something that I enjoy. I get paid for it, which is another bonus, but at the end of the day, my life is my life. I need to decide, do I want to spend 2 to 3 years of my life doing something that is enjoyable, that in 10 years' time I'm going to remember fondly? Yes. Casting and esports isn't going to be the future for me. I think, if I'm being entirely honest, I only want to spend 2 3 years working in esports. After that, I want to be looking over towards things like university. I feel like university was something that I should have done a long time ago. So I want to look at that. I want to look at that in the future. You know, things like psychology, criminology is something that really interests me. But I recognize I'm only 22 years old. We've still got plenty of time ahead of us. I know COVID sucks right now, but there's still plenty of opportunities out there to achieve so many incredible things. And I think if you can push yourself to take these opportunities to flourish, why wouldn't you? Take the advice that you give to other people and try it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely amazing advice. And if you ever considering, universities, Roehampton has a esports scholarship. So if you ever want to get paid to do some shoutcasting for our Siege team, then, you're more
Wait, I
welcome
get paid?
Well, you get the scholarship. It's a £1,500 scholarship per year. It's amazing.
I'll think about it.
There we go. Right. Thanks so much. Where can people find you? Twitter?
Yes, I'm very active on social media, such as Twitter at Fraser R6S. I do have an Instagram, although to be blunt, I only really post photos of food on there, usually pancakes, gotta admit. That is also Fraser R6S. In addition to that, I mentioned I do stream regularly on Twitch, twitch.tv/Fraser_. It's a pain in the ass because, to be blunt, I just want Fraser, but, here we are. Welcome to 2020. Everyone's got a similar username.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Fraser, thanks so much for joining. I'll leave all the links to your social media in the description down below, but I can't thank you enough for joining us today, and well, have a lovely day and enjoy your future casts.
Thank you.